Welcome to Live, Laugh, Shut the F Up, and Listen. I'm your co host, Katie Eades, Chief Owl at Owl Professional Development.
I'm Marissa Senzaki, and we're your strategic partners for evaluating personal and professional development trends.
And today's trend we are talking about is all about self healing versus surrendering to your damn self. And I loved prepping for this episode because we're going to also talk about the trend of human design. And if you probably haven't heard of BG5 entering the corporate space of human design, because it's not trendy yet, which means it's not been corrupted. And Marissa, you are a great connoisseur of self-healing, if I were to say that. You have always chosen yourself over a profession. You've always said that your mental health is more important. How do you feel about all the self-healing trends out there?
I think they're a bit of a hamster wheel. And don't get me wrong, because I've done things that I would call self-healing, and I've worked a lot with like limiting beliefs and core wounds and that kind of work. But I think there comes a point where we get too obsessed with trying to constantly improve and heal. And I think when you first introduced me to the concept of human design, what was kind of just refreshing was this idea of this is the blueprint for like who you are and how you act and why you are the way you are. And that's perfectly fine. So I think there's an element of you used the word surrender earlier when I was talking to you about surrendering to this design that's been made for you. So maybe you can talk through a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. So if we know that we are electromagnetic beings, we give off an electromagnetic field that we can measure. And before we're a cell, before we're biology, we are a spark in the womb. And so as that result, our energy enters the world at a very specific time as it's spinning on this giant rock. Whether you think it's flat or round, I think we all agree it's spinning. It doesn't have roots, right? I don't know where those people are at. But there is an electromagnetic force that has an imprint that essentially is your limitation. 88 days before you're born, that neocortex comes online and gets an imprint with your unconscious. And what I find so fascinating about the art of psychology is that they focus so much on, well, you just make the unconscious conscious and then you can do different things. But you unconsciously beat your heart. You unconsciously reproduce your red blood cells. You unconsciously remove waste. And then you get a little signal in your body that says you have to go do some force to make it work together. But you don't tell your body what to do. Your body runs. And then when it doesn't run, you go ask somebody else what's wrong with it instead of asking your body, which is a whole different conversation. But when we surrender to this idea that in the womb, you are feeling the vibrations of what's happening around you, and we can measure the quality of a vibration. Low level is different than high level. And your heart is forming first, and there's a nervous system in your heart. That's the brain. And there's that nervous system that develops in the limbic, which is in the brain. And then we don't get the prefrontal cortex fully developed till later, but the brain comes up second. And the moment you take that first breath, the brain comes online, and it also has an imprint and it's ridiculously accurate. So experiment with human design and you can say, yeah, that sounds like me. Yeah, that doesn't. But when you realize that you were born into a very specific public role, you have very specific strengths, and I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't know about yourself, you now can just surrender to, well, if this is what I'm here to do, is just to be myself and to use the talents that only I have in this way, then there's nothing to heal except a nervous system that's nervous about not understanding its own system. And so knowledge is like a little bit of power, and that's great. But this idea of healing the childhood, healing the inner child, we just need to complete the childhood. Transforming a self-limiting memory, meaning it's limiting you now. And so we need the nervous system to have a full acceptance of that moment and a full integration of that, so that the limbic system isn't subconsciously scanning and looking for what's familiar. Then you could say, so I guess you heal. But in the self-healing world, I like that you use the hamster wheel. It is a hamster wheel because there's maintenance. Like, it doesn't really take any maintenance for me to just wake up and be myself. knowing how I'm designed and knowing what the signs are for when my not self shows up, which is all I call is nurture.
Yeah, I like the idea of the not self. So in human design, what is this concept of there being this like authentic self versus a not self?
So there's the conscious personality, and you have 26 traits that show up in that consciousness. And they may define one of the 9 functions or several of the 9 functions. If you don't have those functions defined consciously or unconsciously, you're going to have a lot of nurture there. Nurture, I like to think of as wisdom. Let me tell you about the wisdom I gained learning that my parents, when I was much, much older, were both knew that dad was gay and they left Katie out of that. Frequency wise, I know I am a human lie detector test. Marissa, I think you're also there with being able to understand people, but that's because my nurture is an emotional center that's wide open, as is yours. And so wide open, I would have been nurtured, taking in and amplifying emotions and filtering them through only the other people's way to filter. I don't have my own way to filter through emotions, which when I had my Akashic record reading, she said, I'm very open. I'm like, this is why. And so knowing that that's my nurture and that both of my parents happen to have a definition in their emotional centers, some conscious, some unconscious, knowing that I was destined to absorb this and become wise about it, very different. Okay, so weaknesses are where I have wisdom, but it's not consistent. And if it's unconscious, you literally have to surrender. You can have amazing strengths that are unconscious, but the body gets to decide. You've really got to listen and be in tune with your body. So human design gives you a blueprint of like, where are you lit up? Where are you a closed circuit, meaning that you have the full energy, you don't need anyone else? And where are you an open circuit, which is why we're designed for relationships. We're designed to work with others so that those can come together in synergy. And what I really enjoy about human design's concepts is that they're binaries. So we're not looking at good and evil. You can look at a spectrum of healthy versus unhealthy traits or behaviors that you see expressed as a result of these. But we're really just looking at the binary and the yin and the yang and the darkness. Like, we don't get light without darkness. The stars are in the sky right now and you can't see them. You only get to see them in the dark of night.
Mhm.
So I like to,
So
yeah.
on that spectrum, what's an example of maybe in your profile, my profile, of that not self characteristic?
So unhealthy for us is when we step into rooms and we just amplify the emotions of others around us. Where when we're in a healthy state, we step in the room and we might feel the vibration in the room. We might feel that we don't take it personally. We don't think
Mhm.
it's about us. We don't even want to shift or change it. Sometimes people pleasing lives here. It's very rare that I find a people pleaser that doesn't have this center open. And so when you have that awareness of, okay, so we typically don't like to be in our bodies because we don't want to feel those vibrations. And deeper trauma experiences, however your nervous system has assigned your experiences. So I almost think like deeper trauma is even more interesting. It's just the quickness of the
Mhm.
trauma that can really shift things, right? It can be a minor car accident and still leave a major impact. And so really learning how to be in your body, because we're supposed to listen to our gut, is something that I think a lot of open emotional center people need because we have avoided feeling that. It's uncomfortable. Would you agree that sometimes that's where you might get distracted?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if this would be similar to what other people call being a highly sensitive person. I think we see that, on the internet a lot too. But I definitely feel like sometimes they just don't have that emotional bandwidth to be in big noisy places or in places where I know I'm going to have to like network and have these superficial conversations, which, I like the deeper conversations. And so I might just not put myself in certain situations because I don't want to feel all of the energy, and it exhausts me.
And that's your public role. As a natural influencer, your public role is to really balance your time between being in the public and not being. And for me, knowing that my public role is really for strangers means that I need to spend time in places where I get to interact with them and swoop in and swoop out. And knowing that my public role also is being an authority in areas, this is why I don't like to do things I'm not an authority in. And there is a definite nervous system reaction to having to show up in something where I'm expected to be an authority and I'm not. And when we talk about this imposter syndrome, I think for this particular quality one line, this is my body. And so I've never really felt like an imposter. I've just felt like I am not, like I guess I've never thought, "Oh, I can't do that," even though I've never done that. So to me, that's
Mhm.
a true imposter. It's like, "Oh, man, I'm not really here to do this." My imposter is really like, "No, no, I am an imposter. I do not have a strength here." But when you start reading Syndrome, you're like, "Oh, shoot, I have that. That sounds like me." No,
Uh-huh.
it's right? And for someone like yourself who's naturally talented at things, you may, but you also really want to be comfortable in your environment. Like you may not want to step out and push yourself outside of comfort zone because your body will physically be tired as a result of going against how you're designed.
And I think that's what we're seeing a lot in these different popular psychology trends is that there's always this extra thing you have to do to improve, or like even what we see in corporate America. I think there would be a manager who pushes you to kind of, like you said, step outside your comfort zone, but it's something that they say, this is a weakness that I'm going to write up in your review. And, what are steps we can take to, get you to try something that you're not used to, or you don't have that expertise in yet that you want to learn. Is that, though, the right way to do it when it comes to human design?
So I look at human design as an opportunity to just experiment for yourself. Does this feel true? So if the answer is yes, then just be more of that. And the brain has to have a memory in order to look for something. That's why if you buy a new car, you see it everywhere, is now it has a physical memory. Well, 95% of the brain doesn't know the difference. So it's also really helpful for you to imagine in your mind, like, who are you being when you're really in that strength? But also shifting your breathing to your belly is not human design. This is the heart math that I posted the other day. But really understanding that you're going to want to create who you are at the nervous system level. So, really being in tune with your body. Human design is saying this is how your body's energy works. Technically, we're all highly sensitive people because we all take in energy from other people and we amplify it. A lot of people that tell me they're empaths actually are emotionally intelligent because they have it defined, but they're open heads. And so they're just writing stories about people that they should be feeling it. They're actually not physically feeling it in the same way that you or I would experience it. And so understanding that since your body is in charge and you need to surrender to it, you need to learn how your body was designed to operate best. You and I are both gut intuition people. We only know our truth in the now, but we do know our truth in the now. When asked yes or no, this or that questions, how much of the self healing have you done where they had you journal on open ended questions or they asked you open ended questions?
Mhm. Well, we both did the morning pages for a while.
We did.
I did not, and I think I did it maybe for 2 weeks, but,
Me too.
I would say that exercise did not help me, but I've definitely done the prompts as well. I think a long time ago, I downloaded something off the internet, and it's, like, still in my Google Drive, and it was, like, 50 questions or something to find your life purpose, and it's, like, answer all these prompts, and then at the end, you're supposed to, like, know what to do with the rest of your life.
And really, all you need is someone to ask you today because you don't
Uh-huh.
actually know tomorrow. And when I think about your Portugal trip versus me not going on the Portugal trip, because Kim asked me, she's like, let's just book them today.
Mhm.
And I really wasn't excited about that moment. And I know now why I wasn't supposed to go. I'm gonna buy this home. And you were asked several times and had that gut reaction of finally that said, yep, that's the one. Because
Mhm.
we could have purchased tickets long before that. And what I when I honor getting back into the body, like what you really need to do to quote unquote heal is you just need awareness, and then you need people to ask you questions. And I've caught myself now in whenever I'm making plans with someone, like I'll say, "Do you want to eat at 11:30 or 12?" Like I am giving always giving one or two options.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because I hang out with a lot of projectors. And so those are every single one of those examples I think of in my head right now are projectors. I'm really doing it for me. Because that is how I'm thinking in my head. I'm like, huh, do I want to, should 11:30 be good or 12? I kind of like 11:30. Let me give them options. That's probably, and it's funny because they always come back with the option I like. So far that has served me well. But that if you start to really look at that, this is why coaching didn't work for me. An ICF initials after my there, and all they do is ask open-ended questions. And then at the very end, they get you to the yes and no stuff. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm right. Okay, let's do this. But I'm supposed to do it the next day and or a week from now, or even after the call. And my truth is only in that moment. And I'm amplifying emotions around me. And so what you find is a lot of the self-healing is just about being in yourself. It has nothing to do with actually understanding how to surrender to self. And I like the hamster wheel analogy because people will tell you there's always healing to do. People will tell you, I'll always have imposter syndrome. It's how I know that I'm growing. Like, I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm going to do things that I've never done before, and I don't have imposter syndrome right now. You don't have to. And so anyone that tells you like, "Oh, it's okay because these fancy people do too." Like those fancy people don't have any better self-healing and mental health than you.
Mhm.
Here's my advice. I might be taking it, it's not working, or here's my advice, take it because I'm not using it. And so human design is simply just a tool. And you do need someone that is an intuitive expert like myself to help you understand it. But because that also means I'm throwing things to you and then you're able to respond to them about whether or not, yes, this or that, or ask a question. But then the healing now becomes just like, wouldn't you want to be yourself when you learn how great you are? Wouldn't you just say, you know what? I am that. I want to be more of that. And let's set myself up so that I'm able to bring more of that.
So how can someone embrace more of that not self rather than trying to change it?
Yeah. So that's where you get perspective and wisdom. Since it's not who you are, it means it's not who you are consistently. And that makes sense. I used to tell people that I'm consistently inconsistent, or I'm consistently consistent with a shower of inconsistencies, is how I've described myself. And now I know why I use that. I'm supposed to be an authority in how to play the game of life. And so I know that there are areas I'm inconsistent. In my chart, there are 3 of the 9 centers that I'm inconsistent. And then there's all the other traits that I don't have that I'm also going to be inconsistent with. So that means that I don't try to be something I'm not. And I get to be wise, particularly when other people show up that have that strength, because we all know that the problem with strengths is that people overuse them. And so the yin and the yang is that you have people that are wise about strengths they don't have, and you have people that have the strengths and you give them the runway to use them. One of my major strengths is asking questions. So when I was in the last gig where I was chastised for asking too many questions, now I would laugh at that. Instead, I got Lexapro, went to the darn
Uh-huh.
therapist, which is what she suggested, and I went to the bathroom to cry. And instead of laughing and being like, well, I'm supposed to be a heretic and I'm supposed to be an authority on things, it allows you, and it's
Yeah.
not about making excuses. It's about recognizing I'm working. I'm this rejection isn't protection. This rejection is I'm working the way that I'm meant to work. This concept of regret is very odd to me because when you look back I think of the butterfly effect of, well, if I could have just had this, I would be different, or if I had that. But the wisdom that you get to share, your mess is your message, your authority that you've become in something, because authority requires experience, direct hands-on living experience. Those are the reasons why I would say that human design almost says, "Oh, no matter what parent I was born into, these were gonna be the shadows that I got." Yes, because of my dad, I have the shadow in my personality. But that also means I have the strength I inherited. It really helps you understand how you were born into someone else's story. And if you want to embrace that you chose to be born into that story, you can. And if you want to say that, well, God chose a story for me and it sucks, well, maybe that is true, whatever you want to believe, but you're born into someone else's story. And this helps you see the energetic story that you were born into. And at the DNA level, there's expressions. That's why some people are gifted in some areas and some people are not.
I love that you were called out for asking too many questions, and I've been called out in my work for not asking enough questions. Because it's just so funny the expectations that people place, right? For me, at one point, I had a manager who said I don't ask enough questions, or like bring enough of the team in, and then I'm sure for whatever reason, someone was annoyed of asking too many questions was some kind of trigger for them. And I'm wondering, like, how are these actually gifts for us in different ways?
Well, if you were to have a Netflix movie, if you were, or series, if you were to create a story, and that's what companies are, right? Companies tell stories. Companies have stories. Every day that you show up to work, you're living out a story. And so you have a role to play. And so your role was not to ask the questions. That is my role. Can I get in the room? That is anyone with a one lines role. Can they get in the room? You bring this gift of connecting with others through a shyness. You are naturally good in certain areas. And so you only show up in the areas that you're naturally good. Why would you show up in those other areas? So we would recognize if what I value in this role is someone that asks questions, let me hire someone who has this quality. Let me hire someone whose public role it is to do that. Also, we don't have to fire the person that's in the role if someone wants that. We can connect that person to the role where you are the natural influencer. So you are not the natural authority questioner. You're there to naturally influence the process and to really be
Mhm.
that voice for people. So when we understand that, we wouldn't say, why would we want more of that? And we talk about like, oh, I want someone that can wear 85 hats. Well, I'll show you someone that doesn't really wear 85 hats very well. And I love that there's 12 profiles and there's 12 disciples. So maybe there's supposed to be something there, but there's 12 total profiles. And so there's 12 public roles. We got to start off with someone who creates something new. Well, those people are bonds made, bonds broken people. Those people are authorities, but it will take them 50 years to gain some of that authority, and they're going to gain it through hands on experience. It really also shifts the way we expect people to onboard and learn. If I know that you learn through experiential learning, then these modules and having you watch them are just government check boxes. We did that thing. So I think there's a lot of being able to honor who people are and get the best and the most. Isn't that what companies are trying to do, is to get high performing teams where they're able to get the most out of every ounce of your energy? Why drain your energy connecting you to other things when we can actually get more out of you by having you do the things that light you up? If you leave work and you're not drained, I get 5 days of you working as hard as you have. I get 5 days of your strengths. Maybe we only need 4, it turns out. Let's talk about that next. But um, it is so unfortunate that both of us, our talents have been misused and misplaced for people.
Yeah, and I think back then I was really eager to please. And so then, in the context of that feedback, it was me not, I guess, taking other people's ideas or asking them what they think into consideration. But it was really like me training people on a process I had already created. So I didn't have questions about my own process. So I was like, I don't understand this feedback. But I think at that time I was like, oh, okay, I have to like ask everyone what they think and what do you want and incorporate that and change the thing that like I've made for people. Rather than just feeling like, you know what, like my gift is really in projects. It's really in creating something and being the visionary and creating it from the ground up. My job is not to be the, like the person that gets everyone involved as a cheerleader.
Or what I hear there is like some refining of process, and that is so my jam. And the reason I was asked to what I couldn't understand about why don't ask any questions is like, well, that one question I asked led to a $250,000 donation. And you dismissed the first question and I asked it again. And then I asked a follow-up question. And that opened a door we didn't have. I didn't say that in that time frame though. I took that feedback and I asked fewer questions. And as a 2-line and as a 5-line for me, those are fields of projection. And so people will project onto us what they think we are good at, what they think we should be good at, what solutions for me, what solutions I should be providing. And people can only see what they want to see in the field of projection. Typically, they're going to see your talent. And so perhaps what he sees, and that's the other part, is that your shyness is how you connect with people. And then people just want more, and then they want more of this or more of that. And that's where you're like, yeah, I could do that. But does Marissa want to do that? Because people will tell you your talent. And you have a lot of 5th-line qualities in your chart, by the way. I was looking at it and I was like, that makes sense. Like people just think you should provide so many solutions that you maybe weren't even hired to do, or which is also similar in my case, or that you don't find joy in providing and would have never interviewed for that job in the first place.
So how do you think people can find that right balance between looking like self-reflecting on their weaknesses and maybe areas that they do want to improve on, and also understanding how their weaknesses are actually a gift?
So if I were to look at their chart, I would walk them through, where do you have a 1-line quality, meaning where are you meant to be an authority? And whenever I do that for people, they immediately light up in those areas. Yes, yes, yes. And then we would walk through your chart. Are you already naturally talented? And usually they're like, I don't know about that one. I'm like, okay, so go ask people what you do better than anybody else. Go ask people that are inside of work, outside of work, people that have known you a long time, people that haven't known you very long. Ask them, what do you do better than anybody else? That'll give you a 2-line answer of what are you naturally given. And then if you are looking at a 3-line, you're looking at, these are areas where you're going to learn through trial and error. And the problem with trial and error is that people hear the word error and they think bad. This is a binary. There's not good or bad. And this is where you get your most experience. Also, the 3 lines are where you make your most money. So if somebody hires you, for example, with a 3-line, and a lot of these guys are engineers, and you're working on AI, like there's a good chance you're going to bump into something that creates money for you. So you would look through those lines. 4-line, like Marissa's unconscious line, we see that. We know that deep networks of people that have known you for a long time will open doors for you. Areas where you're 5th line, you're a natural messenger. You love to provide these solutions. 6th line is an area where you're meant to be a leader. You're meant to be wise. No study required. So when you understand each of your qualities and where they show up and how they show up, you can start to lean into those more. And if you're looking to experiment, you can ask the question, what do I do better than anybody else? You can answer it for yourself as well. What do I love to be an authority in? What do I love to tell people about? What do I love to research? If the answer is nothing, like you don't have those qualities, you learn, okay, so then what experiences did you love learning from the most? What hands-on was your favorite way to learn? So that way you're really honing in on, this is how I operate. Once you know how you operate, you can start to create a life that lets your water flow in that direction naturally. That was a long answer to your question.
And so how can people who want to learn to embrace these natural qualities and understand more about human design, what should they do?
I love that question. They should look into the comments if they're looking on this online, or they should pop over. If they're on the podcast, right in there, I'll have a link. You can book a human design and Gene Keys reading with me. Bring your questions that you want to know, and you'll get a 75-minute recording with me for the low price of $300. So I will drop that link in there. And Marissa, you didn't mention your Marissa Senzaki advisory.com for people that want to go check you out. So I'm going to plug you over there.
Yeah.
Marissa, you want to talk a little bit about how people can come and learn from you?
Yeah, I've got a new website up, marissasenzakiadvisory.com. I do a couple of different things. I work on the consulting side, working with startup founders, CEOs who kind of in that early stages of building their company and want to be intentional about the people and culture aspect. So not just recruiting, but how do we build a great place to work? What does that mean? What are our values? And then I do some one-on-one coaching as well with people who are feeling a little bit lost and stuck in their career and are ready for a change.
And if you are a CEO, founder, startups that want to get both Marissa and myself to help with some of your recruiting and advising and looking at how do you show up as a better human? How do you tap into your own strengths? And how do you hire for the ones that you don't have? We are also available for that. So you can, I'll have a link in there as well that you can connect with us. Until then, live, laugh,
Laugh, shut the fuck up, and listen.
listen.